Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'da, habitafillah. A question was asked, Assalamu alaikum. May Allah reward you for your efforts. I hope you can address these questions. Some students of knowledge told me that fiqh is to be studied from a mathab, method of studying comparative fiqh as started by Shawkani was unknown to previous generations of Muslims. All scholars learn fiqh of one madhab and then they progress to study other madhabs. According to them, studying comparative fiqh like most Salafis do is not proper. I'm very confused regarding this, as in India, here Ahl Hadith rely on comparative fiqh from the initial period of seeking knowledge. How to study fiqh as a Salafi student of knowledge? What is your opinion on studying from a book, Al-Qawa'id al-Muyassir, fi thobe al-Kitabi wa Sunnah? So we'll first address this first question, and then there's two other questions from one of our brothers in India. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him. Ameen, ya Rabbil Alameen. So we've talked about this prior, about studying from a madhab or studying comparative fiqh. And really it just depends upon the individual, but in general, I will say that my preference, and really this is not true exactly what they're saying, because in fact if you look at here in Saudi, for example, in the schools and in a lot of the institutions, aside from probably Jamia Islamiyah or maybe the Jamiat, the universities, in a lot of the other schools and institutes, they do really study in generally from the Hanbali madhab. So the books you might start with are Umdat al-Fiqh, and then perhaps progress to other books in the madhab, like the next level of Bin Uthaymeen did the explanation, Zad al-Mustaqna. So, which is more, offers different aqwal or different statements of the madhab, or different narrations or different views of the same madhab, which is Hanbali. And so in general, I would say you do study that. But if you go to a place like Yemen, and with the Salafis specifically in Yemen and in other places, you might find you study fiqh sunnah. So generally they tend to study, and they'll study Imam Shawkani's book as well, Durra Bahiyya. And so you'll find that they may study more the fiqh sunnah, so studying the ahkam from the ahadith. And so as I asked Sheikh Suleiman Rahili this question, or a question similar to this prior, and he said they're both okay, and they're both acceptable. And the bottom line is you study and you benefit. That's really the bottom line. So what I will say, though, by studying a madhab, why I would prefer that over the question that you're asking, which is comparative, because comparative means that you are going to be studying an issue, and then you're going to study what the Ahnaf, the Hanafi say, the Shafi'i and the Malikiya and the Hanabila, what each of those madhabs. And for me, and especially for beginners, I think that's very difficult. That would be very difficult to study comparative fiqh like that. So really, if that is the case, usually that is more, I think, a more advanced skill. However, I know the Islamic University in Medina, that they study comparative fiqh, when they study fiqh. But you have to realize that many of the students from the Muslim world, they have already studied a madhab. So then they already come from a Shafi'i perspective, and then they study that book in comparative fiqh by Ibn Rushd, and other, from other countries. So the point being that I think it's much easier to study not comparative fiqh, because then you're going to get all these different aqwal, and then maybe a qawl or rajih, or what your teacher feels or your sheikh that you're studying feels is the most correct view according to the evidences. So I believe that it's more, it's easier to start with a madhab, so that way you get introduced to the masail. You're introduced to the issues at hand according to one view, and depending on who your sheikh is, that they can teach you what they feel is the qawl al-raji, or what is more in accordance with the evidence. So that way you can get dhabt al-masail. You get the precision when studying those issues. So I think that is, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, that is probably an easier way, but it doesn't harm you to study either way as long as you're not getting confused with a bunch of masail. So I wouldn't prefer for a person to study comparative fiqh right off the get-go, instead studying either a madhab, or if you're studying Imam Shawkani's book or something like this, or fiqh sunnah, you're going to study masail. You're going to study the evidences, the hadith, and then you're going to bring the fiqh masail from that. So, and it still may come, depending on who you're studying with, there's still going to be probably a madhab that you're going to be introduced to those masail. So I hope that's clear, and we talked about that prior to this. The second question you asked, which sharh of Ajurumiyya would be best for a beginning student of knowledge? Again, that depends upon yourself. I would say whatever is available to you. And what is very common is Tuhfa Saniyya as an explanation of Ajurumiyya. So I think the most important thing is, as long as you can get a teacher, then I think that is the better way. But if you can't, you don't have a sheikh, you don't have a talib al-ilm, you don't have someone who can teach you, but now there's so much information on the internet, you could probably go through a whole explanation with perhaps on YouTube or somewhere. There's so much recorded stuff. There's no doubt you can. There's no doubt. There's so much Ibn Uthaymeen's, many ulama, okay, that you can study the grammar online. So you can study their sharh, or you can study the Tuhfa Saniyya, and then there's some other shuruhat that are now coming out of Yemen and that have been out, that are very beneficial and making it really easy, maybe even an easier delivery. And you can research that on the Yemeni, the websites for the Yemeni Ulama Yemen website. The third question, can I be a good Muslim without a cap and thobe, as most of the religious people here wear cap and thobe, and I don't like to wear it? Of course you can be religious without wearing a cap and thobe. A cap and thobe do not define that you are your religiosity. However, from the customs of the Salaf is that they wore they would wear the probably the taqiyya or an imama, that they wore, and that they were pretty in the past, that was something very important from the various customs in the Muslim lands, and especially people who were religious. But however, nowadays in many places that is not necessarily the case. But generally in most of the Muslim lands, the scholars, you usually find them, they're wearing, if they're in in lands like the Gulf countries, they wear the shamach, or gutra, and so forth, and they wear thobes. But if you go to other places, other countries, like if you were in Egypt, they would wear their taqiyya, and they would probably wear the, and then wear a thobe. And if you go to Yemen even, you'll find that a lot of the Yemeni mashayikh, they would wear izars, or the mawas, basically, as I'm wearing now, like this. They wear this, and so this is customary. Somalia as well, but they also wear thobes as well. So those are just garments, especially as religious people, but that doesn't define and restrict your religiosity. So perhaps if you're leading the prayer and stuff like this may be a better example. Some people may make inkar, but I'm from America. This is how our custom is, really. We don't necessarily wear the cap. As you see, I don't usually wear a taqiyya, but I used to in the past. I used to really wear, especially after coming from Yemen, I used to wear the imama a lot, or wrap it in an imama style. So that depends. If you were in Sudan, you'd wear the turban or the imama like that. And again, that goes back to the urf, to the custom. So if that's the custom of your balad, perhaps you may want to wear it, but it's not a requirement. And we ask Allah the Almighty to accept our good and forgive our evil. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.